Let's return to This Week in America. Here's your host, Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. Bon Kay, our guest on today's program, has lived all of her life in Pennsylvania. She retired from the real estate industry after 34 years, owning her own buyer agency at one time. She loved helping buyers and sellers save money during the largest investment of their lives. In this new phase of life, Bon wants to invest in childhood joy and education. Writing accomplishes both. Bon is the author of the delightful children's book, Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Library, the sweet story about the love of a dog and doing good to others, based on her own experiences with her dog, McTAVISH. Bon Kay, author of Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Library, is our guest on This Week in America. Bon, welcome to the program. A pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Rick. I'm glad to be here.
What a great story that you're telling in this book. I love what you've done, the illustrations, the story. We'll go through all of that as we discuss this today. But you are, I mentioned the background in real estate, a very talented writer as well. Have you written all of your life? Have you always been a writer?
No, I started out as just a singing person, went into being a housewife and mother. And then I went into the real estate industry, and while I was in real estate, I also went into community theater acting. So I've kind of had a gambit of being in the media.
Yeah, what great experience, and you bring that all to life, I'm sure, as you're telling this story. Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Library. Bon Kay, our guest on the program. Book available wherever books are sold. Give you information on Bon's Facebook page where you can get information on all her books as we go through the conversation today. I touched on it briefly, the inspiration. What was the real inspiration that got you thinking this would be a great story, not only one story, but a series that you're doing as well? Where did this idea come from?
Well, originally I had an experience after coming back from a high school reunion, which is down in another part of my state. And I had an online company contact me who was a fundraiser for teachers all over the United States that were having trouble finding funding through their budgets to replace things in their classrooms and stuff like that. And they sent me one that was out of my old high school area. It was a school teacher that was looking for something that she could use with like an iPad charging station. Cart, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
And I gave her the amount of money for that cart, and she thanked me through the system. And about 6 months later, I received a thick envelope with thank you notes from her students. There were over 50 of them. It
Wow.
was really a great experience to have that happen. And I had thought about taking my dog, McTavish, with me to visit this school and meet the teacher, but it never came back because my dog passed away after almost 12 years. And then I also, pandemic hit. So I decided that I would sit down and maybe write a book about what I would have done if I took my dog, McTavish, to visit her and her students. And I thought also there hasn't been a dog that kids could love for a very long time. I remember Lassie, Rin Tin Tin, Benji, Beethoven.
Yes.
They don't have any live dogs that you can actually acquaint with. And so I thought maybe this new character be a nice little welcoming addition to the children's repertoire when they're reading. And so I took it off and I started writing about Mr. McTavish.
And what amazing results. The reviews are raving. Here is this character that all of us can relate to, Mr. McTavish. Love the character. It comes alive visually as we're reading the book. We can see this dog in our neighborhood or in our house or in our schoolroom. You've done such an excellent job of bringing the dog, Mr. McTavish, alive. This book in the series is Mr. McTavish Goes to the Library. The author is Bon Kay, Bonkay. If you're Googling, book available at Amazon, all of the usual places. Tell me about Mr. McTavish. Now, that's a Scottie dog. Talk a little bit about this dog because really had a personality of his own, didn't he?
He did. Scottish Terriers have a personality that is always usually friendly, and they do not bark very often, so it was a nice companion for me to have and not be worried about it scaring anybody. He loved children, And I just thought it was a great idea to make it Mr. McTavish, because children always have to have that. They have to have that sense of personality, and their teachers usually are known as Ms., Mr., or Mrs.
Yes.
So I thought this would teach them a little bit of authority that he has, and also teach them some respect and love, of course.
Well, yeah, there are so many lessons, themes brought out in such a charming way in the book, Mr. McTavish Goes to the Library. Did you ever think that you'd be writing books, a book stories, a book series for young children? Maybe 5-10 years ago, did you ever think this was going to be in your future in retirement? I'm going to be a popular children's author.
I had no clue. I think everybody always thinks they have a book in their head, but it's really hard to get it out a lot of times. And I do have a book in my head I haven't written yet, but I decided to start with something that was more fun for everybody, and was something that was enjoyable, and kids need something that's new and fresh, so I'm hoping that Mr. McTavish can do that for them.
Well, that seems to be the case, and we'll talk about the other books in the series as well. And this series is touching young children in a very personable, magical way, where they're able to relate to Mr. McTavish and the story that's involved in the book, Mr. McTavish Goes to the Library. It's one thing when you get this idea, I'm going to write this book, but writing a story is different. Did you have any experience writing stories before the first book in the series?
Not at all. What I had was learning scripts, because in the theater, when you're learning a script, you're also making a picture in your head as to what you're doing, where you're standing, and things like that. So it was pretty easy to picture in my head what I wanted the book story on each page to say.
You know, that's interesting. That background comes in again, where you are able to take some of the draw on that as you're telling the story, because you are telling the story. The story is unfolding. I mentioned the themes in there, and let's talk about that. It's not just a charming dog going to see children. There are several messages, very important messages that are contained in that story. Talk about developing the themes and writing them into the story.
Well, I wanted to make sure that the dog was like a companion dog, so it was trained, and it would be good around any children and adults that were going there, so that they could show respect to the dog, and the dog is showing them respect back. And also some gratitude, because they try, G-Ma, the owner's name, and Mr. McTavish are always having children involved with giving them something or helping them with something, and that was my goal, to have that as a goal for the children to read about, the obedience, the kindness, and the gratitude.
You know, it's interesting. You tell this from McTavish's standpoint. It's not G-Ma that's telling the story. We're seeing this through the eyes of Mr. McTavish. You made it interesting that way. It's a really unique perspective. Did you always plan it that way? How did it come about that this was going to be a story seen through the eyes of Mr. McTavish?
When I was doing the developing, Rick, I was also going back and looking at the old original Lady and the Tramp.
Oh, yes.
Because
yes.
It had that little Scottie dog in there. He was so cute. And I just wanted to see what he did and the things that he was saying and stuff like that. And I thought this would really be fun if we actually had the book in the dog's words, telling the story, and it's just sort of bloomed from there.
You know, I mentioned this is a series. If you will, talk about that. This is the first in the series. Mr. McTavish Goes to the Library, book available wherever books are sold. Facebook, it's very simple, facebook.com/Mr. McTavish Books, and you'll find information there. We'll go through all of that before we conclude our conversation. So talk about the books that you've written, and I'm sure the books that are in your mind now that are ready to be written.
Thank you. Yes, besides my first one, which was Mr. McTavish Goes to the Library, which turns out to be the library in a school where she gave a gift, and they're thanking her for that, bringing McTavish along, because he's always the fun character. And my second book, I decided that I would have something to do with children in the hospital, because my daughter is a nurse. And so we have Mr. McTavish Goes to the Hospital, which turns out to be a children's hospital. this past November, my third book was published, and it's called Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Community Park. And we have a park in our area that I absolutely love to take my dog walking in, and so that was my inspiration with the park scene. And we also need a goodie bar in that park, so I made it that Mr. McTAVISH dedicated to himself a goodie bar.
I love all of these. It's just these great stories, and I'm sure that you've got many. You probably go through the day thinking, okay, I can take Mr. McTAVISH here. He was, I'm sure, a hit wherever he went, so there are a lot of stories ideas you've got there.
I do. I have a storybook about a special type of bookshelf that you can, a book swap that you can make and actually sit down on two benches opposite sides of it and start reading if you want to. Then I have another one that is with a butterfly park that we're developing in our area, so I'll use that as my inspiration. And I have one that I've started which has to do with a friendship bench.
I love all of those ideas. You're going to be quite busy in the future writing and illustrating and getting the book out there. Once you write it, then you've got first you had the conception of the book, then you had to sit and to write it. Now there's the marketing part of it. It's a great book, excellent reviews, but you need to get it marketed. What's this been like for you, and any unique ways you've come up with in marketing Mr. McTAVISH?
Well, I have a great publisher that sent me out and then got me some other publication companies that are helping me out with different media type of venues and things. I've had a day on the Times Square Jumbotron at Disney for a day, so that was fun. We're going to be on there again in February and April, so we have another 2 days to be on that Jumbotron. I'm looking into the types of media that has to do with animation, possibly, and movies. And we're also working with some national, international book fairs.
You've got a lot going on, and it's going to get the word out there. It's just so impressive reading the reviews, the parents and the children. This is a book that everybody in the family can enjoy. This would be a perfect addition to any library, and it's a gift that keeps coming because they keep Bond keeps coming up with more versions of Mr. McTAVISH, who's out telling his story. What do you hope as children? And I'm reading some of the reviews, and it's like, it's making reading fun for children and for the parents as well because they're sharing these stories. What's your hope for the book?
My hope for the book is that children everywhere, all over the world, can embrace him as being part of the friendship, love, and obedience type of thing, where you have unabashed love and obedience when an animal will love you. And I think the dogs have the best loving capacity in the world.
What was it like with Mr. McTAVISH? This had to be fun every day, and spending time and taking him out and the interaction with other people and McTAVISH as well. What was it like living with him?
It was fun. It was fun because Mr. McTAVISH has stubby legs, so you have to kind of walk slower than normal. And again, he just loved, kids would go by and he'd be on our porch. He would do a bark to say hello, and they would say hello back. So it was fun. And I believe that children should have the love of reading at a very young age. And if they love to read about animals, let's give it to them.
Well, and it's interesting because I'm thinking some of the books out there, the themes, the movies, the television shows, young people, they have like sponges and dinosaurs. And as you mentioned, they don't have what we had, which was Lassie and Rin Tin Tin. And that we can't relate to a sponge. We can relate to a dog. We can relate to Mr. McTAVISH.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that we're about due for a good dog to love.
I want to talk about the writing process. One review talks about you're able to write poignant, direct storytelling. Let's talk about that. How challenging was that in storytelling to get your message across, but do it without a whole lot of words because you're trying to hold the attention of young children? What was the challenges in getting this message out, getting the words down to every word had an impact, and yet relay the message that you have in the book?
Well, I had to be sure that each page would have a specific subject that would get the person to go to the next page. And by having the descriptions in the beginning of the dog and how he was treated by his G-Ma, and the love that she showed him by giving him the special seat in the car that he could see, and the hat that he wears, which makes him feel really important. So things like that, and developing that in your mind and then getting the picture on the paper, that was probably the longest process with my illustration team. But we did it finally and got a really good follow through on each of the pages. As you turn the page, it told the next part of the story. It was really good.
Yeah, the illustrations have been called expressive, and I think that's the accurate word as you're looking through this. They really complement the text that you've written. Talk about that, because that sounds like it's more than just a couple of hours chatting with somebody over the phone. You really want to do it right because the illustrations bring your words to life.
Yes, you have to be careful how you describe it. You maybe lots of times have to put your colors, patterns in there. I had the fortunate part of being able to find a McTAVISH tartan, so we've incorporated that into the second book, and so it just sort of like a process of getting the picture in my head, getting it down on paper with the illustration team, and also vivid colors rather than muted colors. I wanted the kids to be enthralled with the colors of the whole scene too.
You've done an excellent job with this book, and I mentioned availability. Talk about that. Where would you suggest people go? And give me the information again on the Facebook page, because you've great information there, and we're all on Facebook.
Yes, we're all on Facebook. That's still being developed, as I'm not really that savvy on Facebook. My publisher has me on Amazon.com, which also means the Kindle version. I'm on BarnesandNoble.com. I'm on Apple iTunes. We've got ePublications, Conversion, and also the Google Play. So you can find me in very, very many places.
All over the place. And we've got links on those on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. So you can go there and get all of the information. And, of course, we'll update as more books come out. And we'll have Bon back on the program. We want to talk about the second book in the series, Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Hospital. And we will do that coming up here in just a couple of weeks on the program. It's been a pleasure to have you here. What has this been like for you? This is the first book in the series. This is the legacy. Mr. McTAVISH, he will live on and amuse children and educate children for decades to come. What's this been like for you? When you picked that book up the first time? It's a beautifully illustrated book, a beautiful presentation. What was that like when you saw that for the first time? Actually held the book in your hand.
I think I lost my breath for a while because of the length of time that you're dreaming about this. And then it becomes an actual dream that is spectacular. It really is hard for a person to put it into words, seeing your book for the first time. Second one was a little bit easier, but it's always great to see them in print when they come out. It's wonderful.
As I say, a perfect addition to the library. Mention it to the school. It's a great book. It brings about discussion. It's so well done. The three books in the series that are out: Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Library, that we talked about specifically today. Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Hospital. We'll talk about that coming up. And Mr. McTAVISH Goes to Community Park. And there will be more of these coming in the series. The author is Bon Kay, if you're Googling, Bonkay. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, all of the usual places, Facebook.com as well. And we have all of that on our website. Bon, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Congratulations on a remarkable job that you've done with Mr. McTAVISH. Looking forward to having you back on the program. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure. And once again, this book, Mr. McTAVISH Goes to the Library by Bon Kay. You'll find it at Amazon, the usual places. Links for all of those on our website, thisweekinamerica.us. We're back on today's program right after these messages.
This Week in America is online. You can visit our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Scott Pinkerton, associate producer of This Week in America. Jay Anderson, segment producer. Ben Watson, webmaster. Otto Bechet, director of engineering and TV production. This Week in America produced and is a trademark of Blue Funk Broadcasting, LLC. For information on all of our guests and to listen to this week's show, our website again at thisweekinamerica.us. And I'm Sean Bratton, executive producer of This Week in America.